What we'd like to do today is a little bit of something different. We decided to pick a topic that had nothing to do with machine learning. Now, Michael mentioned this first generation automation. And for me, the first generation automation has a lot to do with the perception business users have. They think it all becomes magic. And as we know, there are some companies out there that have gone with machine learning and tried to put it into a black box. Little bit of success, but some limitations. We've been talking at the conference about a totally different approach. I mentioned earlier that we actually have been doing this guided analytics now for a couple of years, and we've taken a very different, more robust approach, and I think you've seen some of that throughout the day. Now, the problem we have is this whole topic of automation something that is only valid for machine learning? And that's what got me started. Because I think all of us realize that automation can be pretty good for things. Automatic feature generation or optimization or parameter optimization. There's lots and lots and lots of areas in the machine learning space. But what we were wondering is, can it actually be applied also to day-to-day tasks? And that's what we decided to focus on. So what we're going to do is we are going to focus on guided visualization. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is by saying, I need a graph. Now, you think to yourself, oh, graphics, that's no big deal. Well, let's just take a look for a moment at what that means. In the beginning, there were no graphics. In the good old days, and believe me, I am old enough to know about the good old days. You had to choose your own data, you choose your own graph, you did everything by hand, you had to do your own cleaning, you had to do your own preparation, you had to make sure everything was correct. Now, there have been some business intelligence tools out there that have tried to help us out here a little bit. But the problem is, even though they've given us a level of interaction, there's still some black box logic, and there's still some limitations in terms of data and types, and to be honest, the data still has to be clean. So what we did was we thought, okay, what can KNIME do with its guided capabilities to help in this area? Now, as you've probably figured out, I'm responsible for costumes and for the music. But to actually do real workflows, I actually need some help. So I'd like to invite my first assistant out here. Maarit, can you come on out? Oh, yes. Fantastic. Now, the thing about Maarit is, I knew you are from Finland, and I knew that in Finland they have trolls, but I've also discovered they have wizards as well. So Maarit is going to help me do this. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And what we're going to do is we're going to walk through an example. Now, Maarit, you put something together, and I'm going to be the dumb user. It's really easy for me to be the dumb user, by the way. And we're going to walk through a bit of an example. So should I start? Okay. First thing up. What am I doing here? Well, let me just read. I guess you want me to go and point to some data, because, yeah?
You told me your problem. So you want to have some data,
Yep.
and you want to visualize it.
Right.
But all the pre-processing you don't want to do that manual?
Oh, no, no, no. I want it to be all done magically.
So let's start here something.
Okay.
First, select the data.
Okay, well, let me go click on something. I'll click on that one. We'll go forward. Oh, what am I seeing here? I'm seeing some information about the data.
Yes, so this is the first step now. You selected the data, and this shows you all the columns in the data and their data types. There are string columns and integers.
Okay, so I guess you're saying here, oh, and you've given me a little description on the right so I know what to do. I'm going to go click some data. I'm going to click that one, and that one, and that one. My pointer works. And I've chosen 3 different columns, and that's the data I want.
Okay, so you selected 3 columns, and you want to visualize these?
Yes.
Okay. And you selected 2 numeric columns and 1 column of type string.
Yep.
But before this step, there was already something computed automatically.
Okay.
We checked the data types of the columns. If there were numeric columns with only few distinct values, they were converted to string.
Okay.
Also columns with only constant values, they were removed.
Okay.
So now you selected this string. But have a look. Are you happy with the data types?
Well, actually, when I look at it, what I see is that you've got something as a string, and it's actually not a string. It's a date. Well, I mean, I need to change that, obviously.
So that's why we have this checkbox.
Okay, so I can check the checkbox and go to the next page. Oh, okay. So this is where I'm going to go through and choose one or more that I need to change, because I guess that's this concept of interacting, right? I've told you to change, and you're now giving me a chance to provide my input.
Okay, so there below you see this menu where you can select the new data type of this date column.
Okay, so I'm going to check on it. I'm going to click again. I'll give it some parameters. And over on the right, oh, I can see that if I don't know how to do it, you've given me some description over there. If you can see over on the far right, a little description of little things I can do. I click on that. Oh, I've got a graph.
Okay, so you selected one column of type date and time and two numeric columns. And what you get is line plot, which visualizes the development of the numeric columns over time.
Okay. I like it. It's my right data, but I don't like this business about title and you know, I really need it changed a little bit so that I can use it in my presentation.
Okay, so this graph is interactive. It's generated by a JavaScript-based node. So there is this interactive.
Okay, I'll click on it over there.
Okay, and now you can change the title.
Oh, okay, so I can change my little bit of information that I need to change, and there we go. I click next. Yes, that's it. That's what I want.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'll click.
Okay,
and
so there you have it. Now you can download it and put it into your presentation or where you need it.
Okay, so I'm going to download, and off we go. Great, that's exactly what I wanted. Now, there's many, many tools out there that do things like this, but what we'd like to show you is what happened behind the scenes, because we're going back to that concept of building up pieces to actually build some of these blueprints. So this is the workflow?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Behind. There you see these components, and each component was a process step that we just completed.
Okay.
We selected the data, then we selected the columns to visualize. We wanted to convert some of the data types. At the end, we saw this line plot, the graph. We customized it, and we downloaded the image.
Okay.
And then between these components, there are these other process steps, and they were automated.
Okay. Well, we don't really have time to go into a lot of details of this, but there's a couple of points that I thought I learned a lot from this as I watched Maarit do this. So there's a couple of things we thought we'd highlight, and the first one is right here.
Okay, so here you see some nodes that convert the data type of a column. For example, from string to date and time.
Yep.
But each of these nodes is inside a try-catch enclosure. And what do you think? Why do we have this?
I have no idea. Why?
Okay, so we ask the user to change the data type. And there is always a risk that something goes wrong. Maybe you entered the wrong parameter, the wrong date format, for example. And that's why we don't want the whole workflow to fail because of that, if this one node fails. That's why we put it inside the try-catch enclosure, so that if the conversion fails, there is an alternative input. In this case, the original data type.
So basically what you're doing is you're building in ways of correcting my errors without it falling over. Yeah, as a matter of fact, later on you're going to see this is something that we're finding we're using more and more depending upon the level of interactivity we're building in. This is something that's really, really helpful. Okay, what else did you want to show me? Something over on the right.
So this is now the component that generates the view at the end, the line plot in this case.
Yeah, it looks really complicated.
So here you see quite many nested components. But at the beginning, you could have selected 1, 2, or 3 columns to visualize. And each of them could have been of type string, numeric, or date and time.
Okay.
And of course, there are then many possible combinations of these two. And there you have, for each possible combination, a component that generates a view that shows the most relevant graphs for this selection.
Well, I guess if I were a KNIME workflow person, I could take this whole little component here and just reuse it, because you've done all the work to figure out how to do it, right?
So that's what you can do.
Okay. Well, what can I do with this? I mean, it looks complicated, but at the end of the day, you showed me one graph. What can we do?
So So you can take the workflow, enter your own data, and at the end, depending, maybe you selected only one column and you get one of these graphs.
Okay.
2 columns, maybe a scatter plot or something else.
So you would automatically generate everything possible for me. Okay. Oh, wow, that's pretty cool. And this is for 3 columns. Now, what's really interesting for me in this example that Maarit has put together is there's a number of different ways we could use it. We're not necessarily trying to replace the BI tools out there. We're trying to give you the flexibility of mixing and matching. Maybe you use it standalone and you're pointing just to Excel spreadsheets or CSV files. But you could also automatically take what Maarit has done and include it in the part of a bigger workflow or a bigger application that you're putting together with KNIME. So this is really good for the casual users. Thank you very much, Maarit. Maarit. So what we've effectively done here is we've tried to take care of all of the negative parts of the black box by using this whole concept of components. And notice, in this example, we haven't done anything for machine language. Now, you guys are actually all wizards, right? So it's interesting enough for end users, but is there something in there for us? I would say yes, absolutely. And the next example we're going to do has to do with answering the question, I've just been given new data with 1,000 columns of information that I have no clue about it whatsoever. Is there anything KNIME can do to help me understand this new data? And the answer is absolutely yes. And to do this, I'm going to ask Paolo to come back on stage, dressed a little differently this time. Paolo, fantastic. He is a wizard already. You've seen him on stage, isn't he? He's really good at this. I'm going to hand him the mechanical pointer. I will keep my wand. And Paolo, what can we do?
All right. So let's say that you have a lot of data and you want to analyze it, right? So that's the workflow that you can see here. This is the part that Maarit was doing, right? But we put something here in the beginning. So we still upload some data, and here we compute a bunch of different statistics in order to automatically find what's interesting to visualize, right? And then we can use this component that produces this interactive view that automatically find interesting patterns.
I can't read that very well. Can you make it go bigger, please?
All right, and gone.
Okay, thank you. That's much better. Thank you.
So
old guy.
Okay, so all right, we have here, we start with an univariant column detection. So this system finds for us the most uniform histogram, for example, the most skewed histogram, distribution with lots of outliers. This is all found automatically. The user didn't have to select anything. You just connect the component, and then it works. What else can do this view here? We have multivariate numerical columns, so that's correlated numerical columns. So we can see here there is a strong correlation between those 2 columns. And yes, we can keep on going here and see more relationships. For example, this is a relationship between categorical column visualizing an interactive sunburst chart. And you can interact with it. So want to try with your one?
Yeah, OK. Oh, wow. Can I do it again? And again? Oh, and again?
All right.
Wow.
Thank you, Phil. So basically here, this is the airline data set, right? So this is basically Chicago Airport, and you see that it's really correlated with United Airlines because it's a big app for United Airlines, Chicago Airport, right? And so you can find relationships like this.
What I like about this is, isn't this all the stuff I'd have to do by hand anyway? As I'm looking at data, I'd have to start stepping through it. I'd have to
Usually, yes.
Do you guys do this every day? You know, get new data and go, what the hell do I have? OK, what am I going to do first? What am I going to do second? Have I missed something? That's what I love about this.
All right, so let's keep going. We have more relationship that we can look at. For example, this is when you want to find a relationship between a numerical and a categorical columns. We have here box plot with ANOVA test. And here at this point, we can also see and rank the different features, the different columns by their relevance, by how many missing value and constant values. But let me show you first this actual explorer that is really manual for you to really go and see any column in a data set and see what you want to look. For example, we can here expand the arrival time of planes, and then we can actually see this histogram, right? So it's also custom. You can also explore and do whatever you want.
Okay, so you're doing a lot of things automatically, but you're also giving me some ways to manually go in and take a look at the things automatically. I like that. I like it.
Okay, but what else can we do here? So let's go back up. And then here we have this bar chart that is interactive. And let's say that we see that here is always constant, or we see some patterns that is of some columns that we really don't care about. Let's select it to remove it from our data. So we go ahead and go and select all those different features, right? And as we keep on selecting, we can then finally have a list of different columns that is being selected, and then we go here in the bottom. It's also highlighted right down here. We select apply and close, and now we have the reference column filter, or any node you want to basically do something with those selected columns. In this case, we remove them because they are not really of good quality, or they have some something called ground truth leakage. So basically, the delay is something that is leaking all those columns, and we want to get rid of it.
Okay, now that's really good, but you've just showed me once. But I can imagine with thousands of columns of information that I'm going to have to do this multiple times, or what do I do?
All right, that's correct. Like if you have really hundreds and hundreds of columns, this is something that with a single time won't work, right? That's why we need to create a get analytics application that does this recursively. And we can do this in KNIME. We will need to actually, that's something that.
Yeah. Well, so actually what I want to do is I want to kind of peel the onion, you know. So I want to peel off one layer of bad stuff. Then I want to, no, he's not related to me. And then peel off the next layer. And I want to keep peeling back the onion until I get to something that I want to do. How do I go about doing that?
That's basically we need to create an application, right, to get to the core of the onion. So let's open this different workflow here. And this workflow is actually with a recursive loop start and recursive loop end. And we can see here these elements. Those are exactly the ones I was showing you before in the other workflow. Yeah. We just wrap them with a bit of logic, but basically in this loop start and loop end node.
OK, but you're doing something different here because you're not running this locally, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why we can access it on the KNIME web portal. So we can go here on the KNIME server, open it on the web portal, and this is actually the web portal where anyone can access this via our web portal that you can execute remotely those workflows.
Okay.
So this would be the first component that we were seeing before.
Okay. Well, show me how that looks, because I think you've got an example here to sort of show how you can peel back the layers really quickly.
All right. So we select the data, and the next step, we have the Guided Exploration dashboard here where we go ahead, see the data. We can see that those two features are not really interesting, so we want to get rid of them. So we go here at the bottom, and we keep on selecting all those columns that we don't care about. Then we see that those two columns are selected. So in the next iteration of this loop, we will see that those two columns become something else. And so we then find something actually more interesting to look at, because we do this recursively. And you can also decide where the application goes, right?
Yeah. What I like about this is I've actually used this application myself now a couple of times, sometimes to eliminate columns, and sometimes to say that column is actually interesting, so keep it, but don't pass it back in, because I now want to take a look at the rest of the data. So I can automatically start up columns that I want to keep, automatically start looking at columns that I definitely want to eliminate, and in that way start peeling back the layer of the onion for big data sets. And that's something I just find really, really, really cool.
All right. So let's go now, and we can actually do it again also here. And then you can also see this workflow executing on the server with the remote workflow editor, right?
Okay.
And actually, how did I do all of this? Let's have a look inside on how this component works, right? So we can always open a component, and actually see how it works and customize it. So we can go inside, and that's it. It's basically here all the statistics, all the logic is computed based on the columns we want to, we automatically select to visualize, and then all those different JavaScript nodes, those view nodes, are here selected in our view.
So this is an example of what Michael would call a gray box. In other words, you're giving it, but we can open it up, take a look at it, and change it if we want.
Correct. Like, for example, you don't like one of my charts, take it away. You want to add another one, go ahead, do it. You just need to select, add the node and attach the data and decide what flow variables to use from my application. All right?
So my question is that cool? Isn't that cool? So we're showing you end users, but we're showing you something that you can use as well.
All right. So just to wrap up, to repeat what we went through. So there is no coding that was required to do this. I just drag and drop nodes and connection and the flow variables. This is basically quite useful to use nested wrapped metanode because the dashboard is a bit complicated. So to use a single component is actually not that useful. And then in the first iteration, we have some obvious anomalies in relationship. But after some iteration, there's going to be strong and unexpected patterns that come up, right? And you can customize the dashboard to your needs. And for example, you can also customize the application, the recursive loop, by adding composite views and more functions.
OK. Click. OK, you can now pass on to the next person. The interesting thing about this is by going away from the machine learning, you know, we want to do parameter optimization, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to run lots of models, et cetera, we learned an incredible amount about how you can package and present that. And the fourth person on the team, Scott, is going to come out and help me explain because I have no voice left. He's going to help summarize for everybody. Whoa. What is this? Scott, I'd like to have a little discussion with you. This is not an approved outfit for Hogwarts in the UK.
It turns out I'm from a wizarding school about 90 miles to the east. Some of you may have heard of it. And that's just how we do things here.
But is it a proper wizarding school?
Well, isn't it? I think so. I have the talisman, you see.
We both do.
Aha.
We're both wizards. Wouldn't you like to have one of these? They're so cool. So, Scott, do me a favor. Help us summarize a little bit. Remember, everything we're doing here, you're going to be able to get the slides and the applications, but we thought this next series of slides would help you as you try to explain it to your colleagues. So, Scott, over to you.
So why did we do things the way we did them? From a design perspective, what were some of the choices we made? What are some of the consistencies between these workflows? So if you've seen any of our guided analytics examples, there are several on the hub that are listed here. Use cases like inventory analysis, sentiment analysis, image recognition. Those are all there, and I encourage you to download and play with them. What we really wanted to talk about were some of the ones that you've seen here already, the guided visualization and exploration workflows. We also have a similar one for machine learning automation. These are complete extendable applications. You download them. You can tweak them, play with them, make them your own. But what was in common amongst all of these? When we were designing them, we had some concepts in the back of our minds, and they're consistent amongst these different workflows. So what's consistent about them? For one, you probably noticed when you're looking at them, the layout is similar. Some of what you'll see in the web portal, you have inline documentation. I'll show you kind of how we came up with that in a minute. The style, the way they work, all kind of has a similar feel. And as you've probably noticed, if you've played around on the hub or on the example server, all of our examples come with data, so you're able to execute them right away. It's notable that these blueprints work on KNIME Analytics platforms, so you can just download and run them on their laptop, and you can see the visualizations and everything, but where they really shine is on the web portal, so you can run them in either place. So how did we achieve the consistent look and feel here? If you've played around inside of a JavaScript combined view, inside of a component, you may have seen this new layout panel. If you haven't seen it, I'd encourage you to check it out. When we have all of these different elements on the screen, you know, we have sunburst chart and a table view and maybe a parallel coordinates plot. Those were all arranged there in a particular way using this layout panel. Makes it really easy for you to just drag and drop and move things around. Another thing we did was we used the CSS editor node to define CSS classes at the very beginning of the workflow so that we can do simple things like define our font sizes, define what font sizes or what fonts we're going to use, make everything, the text has a consistent feel all the way through the web portal as you go, and that's just by defining things early and making sure that we use it at each step along the way. And then you may also have noticed the little pseudo workflow at the very top, the kind of the banner image. So that's an indicator to the end user where they are in the process of the workflow, right? Because if they're using this in a web portal, they're not seeing the workflow. They're seeing just what's available in the web portal. So it's nice to give them a view like this to give them an idea of where they are in the process. And that's something that we created with some HTML that's passed via flow variables. And if you want to see exactly how that works, download the workflow and check it out. Another thing that we did here, you may have noticed we had this dynamically populating help in a sidebar on the right-hand side of the screen. So if a user is looking, for example, at the line plot moving average node, and they think, what is this? I don't know what this thing is. They can read the text that is displayed to them dynamically. So if we display some completely different kind of plot, that text changes so that they make sure they understand what it is that they're looking at. Again, this is all done dynamically using variables that we pass.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that this is actually a really powerful best practice that's come out of all of this work. For any of you that are trying to build applications where you have to give it to end users, using this in combination with the workflow behind the scenes so that when you're going through your logic of the workflow, you actually have the appropriate text showing up on the sidebar is something really, really, really helpful in making sure that your users can actually use what you've created for them. Mm-hmm. I love this.
So just talking a bit more about some design decisions, all of these workflows, you can kind of think of them as modular applications, and they're built with components. We've been talking about components all day today. We used components for a specific purpose in these workflows. We use them for interaction. So every time in the web portal when a user needs to do something like upload a file or make some decisions about the model he wants to use or download an image for a report, anytime that he needs or she needs to make a decision there, we've wrapped up that functionality inside a component. Now, there's other ways that you can kind of compartmentalize your workflow. You can use standard meta nodes, and we use those too. We use it for a little bit of a different purpose. So anytime we have some branching logic we need to implement, or we just kind of need to organize the workflow, make things a little bit neater and tighter, we can do that using meta nodes. And you can see an example here of the meta nodes nested within meta nodes, nested within other meta nodes. You can go really deep, right? But it's a good way to hide or compartmentalize that complexity and abstract it away. That's what we've done here as well. One thing that's useful when you're starting the design process, if you're building a completely new workflow, if you use pre-existing components that we provide for you or that you've created for yourself, this is really going to speed up your future workflow development. So the idea here is when you're building a component, some portion of your workflow, think, how can I be kind to the future me of 3 months from now? I can do something, build a component that's going to upload some data, something I do all the time. Future me in 3 months is going to be really happy I did that, right? Mm-hmm. You can put the meta nodes in the repository via KNIME server, or the components as well. And this just allows for some versioning and really easy reuse. We didn't do this in our case because we wanted to make these examples standalone on the hub for you to be able to use, but definitely you guys should make use of the repository if you're going to be storing your components in meta nodes. So what did we learn?
Back over to me. We learned a lot of things. I need the clicker, please. Thank you. This one's kind of running out of power. Think before you build. As Scott said, one of the big things we learned is it's very easy. As we all know, it's so easy to prototype something in KNIME, get something up, get something going, and it works immediately. But if you just spend a little bit of time there, you can actually get a little more robustness in there, helping yourself in 3 months' time. When you're actually building these for other people, you need to spend a little more time thinking about it. People can do the most amazing things, and I mean that in a positive way. we've been getting into situations that, although they know nothing about machine learning, nothing about KNIME, but we can show them visualizations, and they are really good with their own data, and they can give us feedback. That's the positive side. The negative side is they can also do some really stupid things, and you need to be able to take care of that in your logic. So one of the balances we discovered was that the more user interaction, you might possibly need more of these things like control logic and some of the things that Maarit was showing you. If there's little user interaction, you might not need some things like that. When you're first putting the application together, it's easy. But just remember that the more interaction, depending upon what it is, the more you may need to do. One of the things we really learned, though, came about because of this list. I'm not going to go through the list in great detail, but this list was fantastic because it actually summarized lots and lots and lots of challenges that we had with these two applications. And these two applications have nothing to do with machine learning. But we needed all of these things exactly as if we were building a machine learning, because all of those things are pretty standard. We all know them, what kind of data, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're still not learning models, but we were able to take pieces from the guided analytics for machine learning example and reuse everything over in the visualization and in the exploration. So I've got one or two more slides, but did he summarize it a lot better than anybody else could? Thank you, Scott. Really appreciate it. For me, this screams components. And what you're going to see is that everything we've done here is on the hub. It does use components. And you can not only get to the working examples on the hub, you can actually drill down in there and take a look at some of these different, if you want to call them, standard, I haven't figured out a better word than hygiene, but some of the sort of the standard things you always have to do no matter what you do to data, and a lot of them are there. There's one or two other things that I came up with. This is my personal aha. I've been doing a lot of this now for many, many years, and it's just amazing. I never stop learning things, particularly with people like you here at KNIME. Michael talked about components. He showed examples of how they work. But one of the things I only realized as we did these examples is we have components at the high level. There are workflows, they can be packaged, there are blueprints, you can download them. There's 3 of them there. Within those blueprints, they are using the next level of components. You know, every single one of them is using a gather and wrangle sort of components there, and they're all using various types of deploy and visualize components. That's great. Only the machine learning one actually uses the modeling components. But that's okay. You start seeing the high-level abstraction. And basically what we can do is we can keep drilling down. If I take the gather and wrangle one, I can drill down on one, get excited. Wow. I'm going to keep my voice very low. I can drill down on one of those components, and this is just one called pre-processing, and within that pre-processing is another series of components that are hooked together, and one of them is called feature quality calculation, and underneath that are a whole bunch of even lower things. So whether you use metanodes or whether you start actually proactively using this component, I have a feeling that most of us are going to want to start using components for many, many, many things because we can keep packaging them, and it works really well. As a summary, all of these examples are on the hub. You can download them right now. You can try them on your own laptop, and if you're interested in trying them on the server to sort of get a feel for how the web portal looks, because I know for a lot of you, the server and the web portal capabilities were new, this would be a good thing to take a look at so you can get an idea. So what else can we do? We are open. I am personally hoping that the community picks this up, that you start playing with this, that you start putting together your own componentized blueprints, maybe sharing them with the rest of us. Maybe there's standard components we haven't come up with yet. We've got 178 of them on the hub so far. I am sure you're going to have something that will make a fantastic component. If you've got one, please share it. If there's something you think you need, just ask us and we'll see if we can work with either internally or with the community. Talk to us about this. This is really, really, really something. And it's one of the reasons that we like calling it second generation, because it's a different way of going in and scaling up to large numbers of users and applications. But most importantly, please do us a favor, do yourself a favor, download it and try it yourself. After all, it's KNIME.